Hello everyone, welcome to the session. This session is the part of our ongoing payment processing series. In this session, we are going to discuss how to integrate CyberSource payment gateway with Java application using REST API. So let's start our session. What we need for this particular integration, since we are using the REST API, so we will need the security key and security certificate for REST APIs, which we will download from CyberSource Business Center. And we will also need the CyberSource provided REST client, which we will download from the Maven repository. So let's first download the security key and certificate. First, you need to log in the CyberSource Business Center. So let's click on this. Here you can see test login. So you need to click on the test login link. So in the URL, you will see the test. Means we are logging the CyberSource Business Center in test environment with our test credential. So here we need to fill all the details: organization ID or the merchant ID and the username and password. So how to create the account, test account, I already discussed in my previous video. So let's fill all the details. Click on login. You can see I have logged in the portal with my test account. Then you need to expand the left navigation. And here you will see the option of payment configuration. Then you need to click on the key management. And here we need to generate the key for the REST APIs. So there would be an option of REST APIs. So you need to click this and then click on generate. So the option would be selected. So this option would be selected, REST shared secret. Then move further and click on generate key. Once you click on generate key, your key would be generated. So these are your keys. This is the key ID and this is the key secret. You need to copy these keys in your Notepad++. This is key ID. This one is the shared secret. So these are the important keys which would be used in our application. Now we need to generate the certificate for REST APIs. Click on this drop down and select the REST certificate. You need to click on the generate key. Here you need to select the REST certificate and generate key. So this is the certificate. You need to download this. And here you need to enter some password. So I'm entering some password, and you need to keep in mind this password because this password will also be used in your application along with this certificate. So enter this password, the same password here. And click on generate key. So once you click on generate key, your certificate would be downloaded. And that certificate and this particular password will be used in the application that we are going to see in some time. So this is the process of generating the keys, security keys and the certificate for the REST APIs. Next is cybersource-rest-client-java. So we will generate it from Maven repository. I am using the Spring project. So in the pom.xml, you need to add this entry of dependency. This is the group ID, this is the group ID, this is the artifact ID. So basically this is one library related to REST client provided by CyberSource, and this is a version. Then you need to save it, and once you build this project, library would be generated. So these were the two things which are important for the integration. Now let's move further. Let's see the code related part. I have created one dummy project based on the Spring for this integration. So first you need to create one configuration file, one class. I have created configuration.java. And then you need to create one method. And here you need to create the properties and you need to add all these properties. So all the properties. The authentication type is HTTP signature. Merchant ID, you need to give the merchant ID of your account. Run environment would be test environment. So API test.cybersource.com, then keys directory. Here you need to give the path of the certificate which we downloaded. So I have kept the certificate in my code base under this folder, src main resources. You can see this is present. The certificate extension is p12, and you need to add this merchant key id, the security key id which we generated, this key. Then we need to add this key in the next property. So you can see merchant key id and the merchant secret key. So both keys we need to add in the properties. Then you can do this, enable log directory you can mention, file name you can mention, log file size you can mention, and these are the also related to certificate. So enable client certificate is true. If you want to use the certificate, then you can set this as true. Then client certificate directive, here you have kept the certificate. So I have kept here src main and resources. You can see this is the certificate. Then the certificate password, as I was mentioning. So while generating a certificate, you need to give the password. So you need to give that password. Then client id, you need to leave these two blank. I have created one controller called payment rest controller for REST APIs. This controller is having different methods for different operations. One for the capturing, another one is for authorization reversal, then refund, then credit. There are others also for the token related operations. So as per the need, we will call the particular method. Now let's see the first method, which is related to the authorization. So when we want to authorize the payment, then we will call this method, and internally this will call the cybersource REST API. So before we call the cybersource REST API, first we will have to create the request object. The type would be create payment request. So this is the part of the REST client library. If you see this, so you can see the one which we added in the pom.xml. So we need to create first this object, and in this request object we will set the different type of object. For example, for the client reference information, we will create one object for the client reference, and it will have the merchant ID which we have set here. All these types of objects are part of the client CyberSource provided REST API library. Next is for the payment processing. So one object would be created for the payment processing, and here you need to set the capture false, because we are not doing the capture operation, we are doing the authorization operation. Then you need to set it in the request object, this object. Then we will create one object for the card details. Here I have used the sample card, which is supported, this card is supported by the CyberSource for the testing purpose. Then you can set any future date as an expiry date. Then so basically this is an object you need to create for the card details. Then you need to set in the request object. Then other object is for the price and the currency. Then you need to create the one object for the billing address. I have set it the address here. Finally all the details will be set in the request object. So we have populated this request object. Our request is ready. Now you need to hit the REST API of CyberSource. To hit the REST API, we need to create the API client, this, and this API client will take the merchant configuration which we already created. You can see which we already configured here, this. So this configuration will be passed in the API client. You can see this. Then you need to create payment API instance which will take the API client, and then this API client will call the create payment, and you need to pass the request object. It will call the REST API of CyberSource. if you go inside this, you will see more details here, and we will get the result here. We can parse this result and we can see what is the response, whether it's success or failed. So these kind of check we can do. We can check the response code as well. So this is about the authorization, how we can make the authorization call to the REST API. One thing to highlight is I have hard coded all the values here, so this is just for the demo purpose. In actual implementation, these values will be those which will be entered by the customer on the website. So customer will enter the values on the payment form, and once the details will be submitted, we will get those value and set here. So for the demo purpose only, I have hard coded these values. Now let's see the JSP part. I have created different links for different operation in the JSP, and when we will hit particular link, the corresponding operation would be executed. For example, for the authorization, I have created one link. For capturing, I have created one link. For credit refund, there are links present. This is the JSP I have created, index.jsp, and it is having different links for different type of operations. For example, this is for authorization, this one, this is for capture, this is for auth reversal. So whenever we will click on particular link, the corresponding operation would be executed. And this is for some tokens, if you want to create the token using the REST API. Now let's start the server. Server started on 8080. Let's open the application. So this is the application. It is having different links: authorization, capture, auth reversal. So when we will click on particular link, the corresponding method of the controller would be executed, and it will internally call the cybersource REST API for that particular operation. For example, if you are clicking on the capture, then the capture method of the controller will be executed, and one capture transaction will be present in the CyberSource portal. First, let's log in the CyberSource portal. Let's log in the CyberSource Business Center. We will log the test environment. Let's click on test login. Let's enter the details. You can see I have logged in the CyberSource Business Center with my test credential. Now you need to expand this, and you need to go to the transaction management. Click on the transactions. So by default, it will list down all the transaction of last 7 days. So you can see there is one transaction present here. Now let's initiate one more transaction related to authorization. So let's click on this. Let's see if it's so you can see we have got the response. This is the CyberSource response, and this transaction seems to be successful. Now let's check the business center if we have one more transaction here or not. You can see there is one more transaction added here. That is this one. So whenever particular transaction is initiated, it is always assigned with one request ID. Each transaction will have a unique request ID. So for this transaction, this is the request ID. When you click on it, it will open the transaction details, complete transaction. You can see all the details present in this: the billing address, the merchant ID. You can see the account information, the payment, the price, amount, currency. So the request ID of the transaction is important. Now you can see here, you can perform different operations here also manually. Settle the transaction, authorization, reversal. You can also reverse this transaction. So our authorization is working fine. this operation of authorization is working fine. And here also there would be status. The important thing is in the transaction, if transaction is successful or not, how we will understand. In the reply it should be success and the region code should be 100. If transaction is not successful because of some reason, then you can understand the region code. If so, the explanation you can find about different region codes here. So this is the reply is important, it should be successful. You can say request was processed successfully. So this is how we can understand if the transaction is successful or not. Now let's move on to the capture. So just to highlight, capturing is always done. Capturing is also known as the settlement. Capturing is always done against particular authorization transaction. So capturing is not a standalone operation. It is always linked to the authorization transaction. Whenever you are doing a capturing or settlement using some API, whether it's a REST API or any other API, then in the request we'll have to mention the request ID of the authorized transaction. This ID of that transaction, of the authorized transaction. So let's see the code controller. So this is the method for capturing. So here we have given the client detail, basically merchant ID, the amount, how much you want to settle. Then we are passing the properties similar to the authorized one, above method, and then creating a client, capture API, and then passing the request object and this. So this is the actually request ID of the authorized transaction. Means against this request ID, against this transaction you want to capture. Let's perform the capture operation from website. Let's click on the capture. But let's see the cyber source. So you can see one more transaction here that is related to, you can see the settlement, the one which we initiated for capturing. So capturing and settlement are the same thing. When you will see this is the, so basically this is the request ID of this particular settlement request. And you can see the status here 102. You can go and check the code explanation for this. You can see the link transaction. So settlement always happen with respect to some authorized transaction. So here you can see card authorization. So this is how you can check the transaction in the CyberSource portal. Third is the reverse authorization. So for the reverse authorization, this is the method. Here we are passing this, the similar to the above one. How much you want to reverse, what is the region, we are passing the property, and then this. So this is the request ID of the authorized transaction. Means for which transaction you want to reverse. So you need to give the request ID. Let's perform this operation. Click on the auth reversal. You can see it seems to be successful. Let's click. So you can see one more transaction here related to full authorization reversal. So this is the request ID of this reverse authorization transaction. So each transaction will have a unique request ID. Now let's move on to the refund. What is the refund? When refund happen? Means customer has already given the money to the merchant, but when customer return or some cancel the item, then business needs to send the amount back to the customer. Refund will always happen against the capture transaction. Let's see the code. This is for the refund, and here we are passing this. This is common. How much you want to refund, against which request you want to refund. Yes. So let's initiate the refund. You can see the response. Let's see the transaction refund. Yeah, you can see this is the transaction for the refund. Next is the credit. So credit is not against any particular capture transaction. It is the standalone. So let's see the code. This is the credit. So in the credit, you need to mention the card number, in which account this amount would be credited, how much, the address, and then you are hitting here credit through the credit API. You are passing the request object. So let's execute this. Yeah, we got the response. Let's refresh. You can see this is, you can see transaction for the credit. So this is how all these types of actions or the operations executed and works. One thing you need to notice, I have done multiple operations, like 5 operations. So whatever the request ID was already present in my code, I used that one. So some of transaction might be failed because of that. Whenever you will do the hands-on, please use the proper request ID. So for example, suppose you have initiated a authorized, suppose you have done the authorization transaction, then use the request ID of that authorization transaction in the capturing here. Same goes with the auth reversal. Use that valid or proper ID, request ID, for the refund against which capture you want to refund. So use that capture, use the request ID of the capture transaction. So these things you need to keep in mind. Whenever you do the hands-on, please use the correct request IDs. And other operation we can also do related to tokens, like customer token, shipping address token, payment instrument token, instrument tokens. We will take a separate session on this since video is getting longer. You can try with the hands-on. If you face any kind of difficulty or you gets stuck somewhere, then please let me know in the comment section. I will reply on that. If you need these code files, then you can also comment. I will share on the mail. So that's all for this session. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.